Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for a review of the 8th studio album, A Celebration of Endings, by the Scottish alternative rock band Biffy Clyro. So to give you a brief rundown on myself and Biffy Clyro in instant history, if you will, I discovered their music in a way that I'm not exactly proud to admit, with this being 2020 after all. Their song Many of Horror played in the Transformers Dark of the Moon soundtrack about a decade ago, and I loved the song, but part of me just must have wanted to distance myself so much from ever unironically enjoying the Transformers franchise, and I just left them in the past, that song included. That's unfortunate, because over time I've had so many people recommend Biffy's music to me. I wanted to know, what is the whole Mon the Biff chant about? I just felt left out of the loop, but I never got a chance to go through their catalog. But about a week before this album dropped, Weird Leisure was put on to me, and I fell in love with that track. I love the fact that it balanced kind of this odd shift into a different time signature on the hook, and I went back through their catalog and found myself loving so much of the content. Of course, this is a very fresh set of ears coming over to Biffy and giving you an opinion on their back catalog, but I found myself drawn most to not only albums like The Vertigo of Bliss that very early on proved that they could blend sounds of emo and post-hardcore with their odd time signatures, but personally, I love Puzzle and Only Revolutions really more than anything else, and Ellipsis in 2016, their most recent full studio album outside of the soundtrack before this record, that is landing as their weakest for me. After hearing all of their records and kind of getting stoked on Weird Leisure as a single and feeling a bit more indifferent on Instant History, what did this album hold? Is it a true celebration of endings, or is it the start of something entirely new? Biffy Clyro have one of the most interesting and fascinating, I suppose I should say, sonic evolutions of any band in the rock sphere that I've heard in the 21st century. They started off much heavier and more aggressive, tinkering with time signatures constantly, before moving into more of a pop rock accessible lane, which isn't bad considering Simon Neil, their frontman, is an excellent songwriter. A Celebration of Endings really hones in on that once again, and I do feel that there are pop-friendly cadences, but also some unexpectedly heavy moments where the guitars, the drums, the bass groove, it all gets firing. Simon screams on this record, but he also has some really beautiful and tender moments. This record can feel a bit choppy and nauseating in terms of pacing, but it's not a huge problem when there's so many moments that you're just gonna find yourself kind of bopping your head, falling into the groove of the record too. My full appreciation goes out to how the band creates suspense within this record. I feel like there's a lot of unquestioned tension that just slowly starts to rise, and by the time you get about halfway through the record, you're really feeling tense, even though there are some cathartic releases where you just feel like headbanging the night away. But once we get to the track Space, that kind of breaks things up, and you're like, okay, they're able to let off the gas pedal and show us something different without totally tanking the entire appeal of the record in the first place. However, that leads me to circle back to the unfortunate Achilles heel of A Celebration of Endings, that being its kind of wonky pacing in the track list. A lot of these songs do feel like they belong together because they're connected by the central theme, and I can appreciate the fact that they really stayed on track. They didn't get distracted, and there are so many chapters opening and closing when it comes to new endings, new life, or an old life that's going away. I truly appreciate that. It's one of the cornerstones of this record and what makes it fire. But also, the Achilles heel that I have to talk about is the fact that these songs are a little bit all over the place. There's slow songs right after heavy songs, and you're just thrown right back in and out of the fire, and it can be frustrating to say the least. Gotta start off the tracklist breakdown by talking about North of No South, the opening song on the album with these beastly riffs that feel like absolute juggernauts. I could compare it to a horse just taking off right out of the gate, and you see it, you know exactly where you're going, manifest destiny, go and conquer that shit. One of the singles pulled from the record was Tiny Indoor Fireworks, and immediately after that on the track list we have its counterpart, Worst Type of Best Possible, which is intriguing to say, kind of a mouthful, but I love it. Tiny Indoor Fireworks is a great concept. I love the idea of our brain synapses firing on all cylinders at night. It's like a dome placed on our head. There's fireworks going off. We can't get rest. but also this track does have some irritating qualities to it. It doesn't bug me as a whole, but the hey, hey, hey vocals that kind of open and close this track in extended sequences, they get irritating. And that radio rock chorus, it's fine. If I heard this, I truly don't mind the song, but I don't think I would seek it out. To contrast that, Simon Neil himself noted that the worst type of best possible that comes immediately after is kind of the opposite to that track, the other side of the story. And I truly appreciate this song. It opens with these brash riffs that really open your ears and eyes, but it kind of cools off a bit. And after the cooling of jets, we start to reflect on this song's brutal honesty, and I love the track for that. There's also a sweet little solo tucked in there, and I think they did a great job at the instrumentation on this record. It just really feels like kind of loose in the moment. In the studio, they came up with that idea, and it also proves that they don't have to go over the top erupting in order to make a powerful statement. The Pink Limit really piqued my curiosity in the way that Simon describes humanity and talks about the end of our tether being the pink limit. We're tethered to humanity, maybe we're passing on to the afterlife or whatever it may be, a new chapter in our own life. There is a lovely bass groove here. I love the free-flowing guitar solo that just really swept it over the moon, but honestly, the rhythm section is kind of the star of the show, with the drum and bass really being locked in. Given that I hadn't heard this single before the album, End Of absolutely blew me away. Holy shit, this is everything that I could have asked for in a Biffy Clyro tune. It's heavy, it's loud, there's an orgasmic instrumental just dazzling all throughout, some of the best drumming you're gonna hear on the entire record. The guitars wail away. I love Simon's vocals. They're just absolutely ridiculous, filthy. You never want this song to end, and unfortunately it does, but it doesn't stunt the fact that this was a super intelligent, well-done song that pulls off pretty much everything that they do best. Weird Leisure is that time signature changing earworm, which was my introduction to the album, that made me fall in love to the point where I had to check out the entire thing. I feel like this track does a fantastic job at talking about Simon's friend who was addicted to drugs, going through a lot in his life. It feels like it wants to help but doesn't know entirely how to, or if they should continue to. The guitars on the bridge of this track, holy flamethrower, so good. This song is forever stapled to my mind, and I've only known it for a week at this point. Biffy also did a really nice job at handling The Champ, a slow-burning song that slowly lights the torch and has a very cinematic aura to it, which makes sense considering Simon said he wanted this to be their Adele-esque James Bond soundtrack song, and it works on that level, but also it gets better the more patient that you are with it. It doesn't have to necessarily go over the top exploding, but I can still see the volcano in the distance. Instant History and Opaque are gonna have to go down as my two least favorites on the album. I feel that Instant History in particular, it's not bad, it's just lacking in personality. It's definitely a bit of a curveball. It stands out in kind of a bad way on the album, but outside of that, if you just heard it on the radio, I mean, I probably wouldn't change the channel. Opaque, however, is kind of on the other side of the fence. There's so many tracks on this album that do emotion well, but I just feel like this one is really trying to ham it up and tug on the heartstring, but I somehow missed the cue, and I'm just kind of left standing there feeling like, okay, this song is almost empty, and considering there's a track like Space, which is a really cute love song that definitely gets to me considering I know distance, I was in a long distance relationship for years, and it worked out. It's something that you have to hold on to. While it's simple, it definitely gets the job done, and in comparison to Opaque, it just doesn't even compete. Now I know I can't close out this review without talking about the oddly cathartic closing track that really rivets the more time you spend with it, Cop Syrup. I really appreciate that they went for that bold choice of the screamed vocals. It caps things off before winding back down to a beautifully arranged instrumental section in that middle half. It kind of flows like a waterfall. It goes on for a couple of minutes before tapping back into that unharnessed aggression that works really, really well. Such a tough call here when it comes down to the wire and we're wrapping things up, but I have to put a score on everything because there's some truly tremendous songs here that will go down as some of my favorites of the year, but there's also some pacing issues that I can't overlook. Also, a few too done-before generic tunes that felt like throwaway fodder. I still think this album is extremely well done. A brilliant return to form after Ellipsis just didn't get the job done for me at all. Again, this is the perspective of a new fan, but at the end of the day, me, I'm going to give this record a celebration of endings, a light 4 out of 5. Biffy Clyro fans, are you happy that I finally tackled one of their records? Did I do it justice? Let me know your thoughts on the review and the album itself, of course, in the comment section down below. Don't forget to drop a like if you want to see more reviews like this in the future. Subscribe for the love of music. If you want to see more of my reviews, then tap the 2020 playlist right here, or tap here to see another recent video. All of my socials can be found in the description down below, and I'll see you soon for more right here on ARTV.